Welcome to the Deep Sleep Science channel. Tonight, we're going to gently explore the quiet science of the mind. As you settle in, allow your thoughts to slow down and soften, knowing that nothing here needs effort, just calm curiosity. If you enjoy peaceful journeys through psychology and the science of how we think and feel, you can like, subscribe, or leave a small comment now, and then simply let your mind drift as we begin. Psychology is one of the few sciences that tries to study something as invisible as a thought, using tools as concrete as careful observation, measurement, and repeated testing. It looks at what people do on the outside: speech, choices, habits, expressions, and also at what happens on the inside, like attention, memory, emotion, and meaning, then asks what patterns reliably appear across many lives. In 1879, Wilhelm Wundt is widely credited with establishing the first laboratory devoted specifically to experimental psychology in Leipzig. That moment matters because it signaled a shift. Questions about the mind could be approached not only with philosophy, but with controlled methods, timed tasks, standardized stimuli, and systematic records, so ideas could be checked against evidence. Modern psychology stretches in two directions at once, and that balance is part of its strength. Some researchers focus on basic questions: how learning works, how perception is built, how emotion shapes decisions, while others apply those insights to real needs like mental health care, education, workplace design, and human performance. A central commitment in psychological science is that explanations should be testable and, in principle, capable of being shown wrong. This is what separates a comforting story from a scientific claim. The claim has to make predictions that could fail, and if it fails, the field adjusts, refining ideas, changing methods, or replacing theories entirely. Many findings in psychology are probabilistic, meaning they describe tendencies in groups rather than guarantees for individuals. That's because people differ in history, biology, culture, and context. So psychology often aims to estimate how likely something is and under what conditions, rather than promising that a pattern will always appear for everyone. Some of the most fascinating cognitive studies show that our attention can become so focused that we genuinely fail to notice something unexpected right in front of us. This is called inattentional blindness, and it reveals that awareness is not simply what reaches the eyes or ears, it's what the mind selects, prioritizes, and builds into a conscious moment. Change blindness is a related surprise. Even large changes in a visual scene can go unnoticed when the change happens during a brief disruption, like a blink or a cut. This tells us that the mind is not storing a perfect snapshot of the world. Instead, it holds a working model that feels complete, even when many details were never encoded. Working memory is the mind's small, active workspace where you hold information briefly and manipulate it, like keeping a phone number in mind long enough to dial it or comparing two ideas while reading. It's powerful, but limited, and many everyday struggles losing track mid-sentence. Forgetting why you walked into a room are connected to how this system gets overloaded or interrupted. Long-term memory comes in different forms, and that variety helps explain why some things are remembered vividly while others become automatic without conscious recall. Episodic memory stores personal events, semantic memory stores general knowledge, and procedural memory stores skills like typing or riding a bike, often without needing you to remember in words. The testing effect shows something quietly reassuring about learning. Recalling information strengthens memory more than simply rereading it. When you retrieve an idea from your mind, you're not just checking what's there, or practicing rebuilding it, and that rebuilding makes the pathway more stable for the next time you need it. The misinformation effect demonstrates that memory is not a fixed recording, but a living reconstruction. When people receive misleading information after an event through questions, conversations, or media, it can bend into what they later report, not because they are dishonest, but because the mind stitches details into a coherent story. Source: monitoring errors happen when the mind confuses where a memory came from, whether it was personally experienced, imagined, or suggested by someone else. This is one reason vividness alone isn't proof of origin. A memory can feel clear and still be misattributed, because the brain stores content more easily than it stores the label of its source. Decision-making research often shows that humans rely on heuristics, fast mental shortcuts that usually work well enough, especially when time or information is limited. These shortcuts can be efficient and even wise in everyday life, but they can also lead to predictable errors when the situation is unfamiliar, emotional, or carefully designed to mislead. The framing effect is a simple but powerful illustration of how wording can shape choice. When the same outcome is described as a gain versus a loss, people often respond differently even though the numbers are identical, because the mind reacts not only to facts, but to the meaning implied by how those facts are presented. Loss aversion describes a common pattern where losses tend to feel more intense than equally sized gains. In practical terms, losing $20 often feels heavier than finding $20 feels good, which can influence saving, risk-taking, negotiations, and even how people remember experiences. The planning fallacy is the mind's tendency to underestimate how long tasks will take, even when past experience suggests otherwise. It's not just optimism, it's often a focus on the best-case sequence of steps, while forgetting delays, interruptions, and the simple reality that many tasks contain hidden work. Hindsight bias can make events feel as though they were predictable after they happen, even when they weren't. Once we know the ending, the mind rewrites the path to it, highlighting clues that fit and fading details that didn't, which can lead us to overestimate our earlier understanding. Stress responses involve coordinated changes across the brain, the endocrine system, and the autonomic nervous system. When the mind perceives threat or high demand, the body prepares shifting energy, sharpening certain kinds of attention, and adjusting heart rate and breathing so action is possible, even though modern stressors often don't require physical escape. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change with learning and experience across the lifespan. New skills, repeated thoughts, and sustained habits can strengthen certain neural pathways, while unused pathways can weaken, which helps explain why practice matters and why change, though sometimes slow, biologically possible. Brain networks work like coordinated teams rather than single isolated centers, which is why complex experiences like feeling calm, making a plan, or understanding a sentence rarely belong to only one brain region. Instead, multiple areas exchange signals, sharing information in patterns that shift depending on task, emotion, and context. Psychology, at its widest scale, is a scientific field focused on behavior and mental life, building knowledge through careful measurement and repeated tests. Its aim is not only to describe what people do, but to understand the principles behind learning, perception, emotion, relationships, development, and change. Modern psychology includes both basic research and applied work, and those two sides constantly inform each other. Discoveries about memory, attention, or social influence can guide therapies and education, while real-world problems can reveal new research questions that laboratory studies then investigate more precisely. A core scientific idea in psychology is that explanations should be testable and potentially falsifiable, so they can be strengthened by evidence or replaced when they fail. This attitude keeps the field moving, because progress depends on being willing to revise even cherished ideas when better data appears. Because many findings are probabilistic, psychology often speaks in patterns, risks, and tendencies rather than certainties. That is not weakness, it reflects the complexity of human life, where the same environment can affect two people differently, and where outcomes emerge from many interacting influences. Operational definitions make psychological concepts measurable by translating abstract ideas into indicators you can observe. Instead of treating a stress as only a feeling, a researcher might measure it through questionnaires, behavior, or biological markers like cortisol, so different studies can compare results with shared standards. Reliability is about consistency, whether a measure gives stable results across time or across items, while validity is about accuracy, whether the measure truly captures the concept it claims to measure. A tool can be reliable but not valid, like a scale that always reads 5 kilos too heavy. Internal validity focuses on whether a study supports cause and effect conclusions, while external validity asks whether findings generalize beyond the study setting. A tightly controlled experiment can reveal causality, yet still require careful testing to see how well it applies in everyday life. Random assignment reduces systematic differences between groups by giving participants an equal chance to enter each condition. Over many participants, this helps balance out hidden factors like prior experience or temperament, so the effect of the intervention can be tested more cleanly. Blinding helps limit expectancy effects by reducing what participants or researchers know about who receives which condition. When expectations are lowered, the results are more likely to reflect the true impact of the manipulation rather than the hopes or assumptions of the people involved. Placebo effects show that expectations can shape subjective experience and sometimes measurable outcomes. When someone believes a treatment will help, attention, interpretation of sensations, and even stress-related physiology can shift, creating genuine changes that are not imaginary, but are driven by belief and context. Demand characteristics happen when participants guess a study's purpose and unconsciously adjust behavior to match what they think is expected. Good studies try to reduce this by using neutral instructions, careful cover stories, or measures that don't make the hypothesis obvious. The Hawthorne effect refers to behavior changes that can occur when people know they're being observed. Simply being watched can make people more careful, more cooperative, or more motivated, which reminds researchers to consider how observation itself can become part of the situation. Replication is the practice of testing whether a finding can be observed again with similar methods and conditions. When a result replicates, confidence grows that it reflects a real pattern rather than a one-time coincidence, a fluke sample, or a methodological accident. Meta-analysis combines results across many studies to estimate an overall effect, often weighing studies by sample size or precision. This approach can reveal consistent patterns that single studies may miss, and it can also show when effects vary widely across contexts. Pre-registration records hypotheses and analysis plans before data collection or before analysis begins. By making intentions clear ahead of time, researchers reduce the temptation to search for patterns until something works, helping results better reflect genuine predictions rather than hindsight. Effect size describes how large a difference or relationship is, which matters because a tiny effect can be statistically significant in a huge sample, yet have little practical meaning. Effect sizes help translate findings into real-world impact, showing whether a result is subtle or substantial. Statistical significance depends on both effect size and sample size, meaning large samples can detect small differences, and small samples may miss meaningful ones. This is why researchers look beyond p-values and consider magnitude, confidence intervals, and replication. Confidence intervals provide a range of plausible values for an estimate, given the data and assumptions. Rather than offering a single number as if it were exact, they acknowledge uncertainty and show how precise or imprecise the estimate likely is. Correlation does not establish causation, because two variables can move together for many reasons. A third variable might influence both, or the direction of influence might be reversed, which is why psychologists design experiments, longitudinal studies, and careful analyses to test causal pathways. Longitudinal studies follow the same individuals over time, allowing researchers to observe development, change, and sequence. Because timing matters in psychology, what comes first often shapes what comes next. These designs can reveal patterns that cross-sectional snapshots cannot. Cross-sectional studies compare different people at one point in time, which can be efficient, but can also mix age effects with cohort effects. Differences between younger and older groups might reflect historical experiences, education, technology, culture, not just aging itself. Naturalistic observation studies behavior in real-world contexts with minimal interference, capturing how people act when life is not staged. This approach is especially useful when laboratory settings would distort the behavior, or when ethical limits prevent controlled manipulation. Experience sampling asks people to report feelings or actions repeatedly in daily life, often through prompts on a phone. By collecting many small moments rather than one distant summary, it reduces memory bias and reveals how mood, context, and behavior shift across ordinary days. Psychophysiology links psychological states to bodily signals like heart rate variability and skin conductance. These measures can show how emotions and attention alter the body in real time, offering clues that complement self-report, especially when feelings are subtle or hard to describe. Neuroimaging methods like fMRI estimate brain activity indirectly through blood oxygen changes. They can map which networks tend to engage during certain tasks, helping researchers connect mental processes to patterns of brain coordination, while still requiring careful interpretation. EEG measures electrical activity on the scalp with very high temporal resolution, capturing rapid changes that unfold in milliseconds. This makes it useful for studying attention, perception, and sleep-related rhythms, even though its spatial precision is more limited than some imaging methods. Cognitive psychology is a broad area of psychology that tries to understand how the mind handles information from moment to moment. It looks at how we pay attention, how we notice details, how we store memories, how we use language, how we solve problems, and how we make choices. In a simple way, it studies the mind like a system that receives input, processes it, and produces actions, while also trying to explain why the same input can lead to different outcomes depending on context, goals, and past experience. Selective attention is the mind's ability to focus on a specific stream of information while letting other things fade into the background. It's the reason you can listen to one person speaking in a noisy room, or concentrate on a page while other sounds continue around you. This focusing is not just a preference, it's necessary, because the brain cannot fully process every sound, sight, and thought at once. Selective attention acts like a filter, deciding what gets deeper processing and what gets only a quick glance. The Stroop effect shows that reading can become so automatic that it competes with other tasks. When you see a color word like blue printed in red ink, and you're asked to name the ink color, your brain often slows down or makes mistakes. That happens because reading the word is fast and deeply practiced, so it pushes into your response even when you don't want it to. This effect helps psychologists study cognitive control, your mind's ability to override an automatic habit and follow a different rule. Divided attention refers to trying to focus on more than one demanding thing at the same time, and it usually leads to weaker performance. When two tasks both need mental resources like listening carefully while writing a message, attention has to split or rapidly switch back and forth. This switching can feel smooth, but it has a cost. It increases errors and slows response time. That's why multitasking is often really task switching, and why performance drops when tasks are both complex. Working memory is like the mind's short-term workspace, where you hold information long enough to use it. For example, when you do mental math, you keep numbers in mind while you calculate, or when you follow directions, you hold the next step until you complete it. Working memory is limited, meaning it can only hold a small amount at once, and it can be disrupted by distractions. Because it supports reasoning and self-control, working memory plays a big role in learning, problem-solving, and even emotional regulation. Chunking is a strategy that helps working memory by grouping small pieces of information into meaningful units. Instead of remembering 12 separate digits, you might group them into 3 groups of 4, or turn letters into a familiar acronym. Chunking works because meaning compresses information. One chunk can stand for several details you no longer have to store separately. This is why expertise matters experts can chunk more effectively, because they recognize patterns and structures that beginners don't yet see. Cognitive load theory explains that learning is limited by the small capacity of working memory. When you're learning something new, too much information at once can overwhelm the mental workspace, making it harder to understand and remember. Good teaching and good explanations often reduce unnecessary load by presenting ideas step by step, using clear examples, and avoiding distractions. Over time, as knowledge becomes organized in long-term memory, tasks that once felt heavy become easier because they require less working memory to handle. Long-term memory is not one single storage box. It includes different systems that store different kinds of information. Episodic memory holds personal experiences like a birthday or a trip, often tied to time and place. Semantic memory holds general knowledge, like what a word means or what a country is, without needing a personal story attached. Procedural memory stores skills and habits, like typing or swimming, which you can perform, even if you can't fully explain every step in words. The spacing effect describes how learning lasts longer when study sessions are spread out over time rather than packed into one long session. When you revisit material after some delay, your brain has to work a bit more to retrieve it, and that effort strengthens memory. Spacing also allows sleep and time to help consolidate learning, making connections more stable. This is why regular short reviews often produce better retention than last-minute cramming. Context-dependent memory means that recall can improve when the environment at retrieval matches the environment at learning. Small cues like the smell of a room, background sounds, or the visual setting can become linked to what you studied. Later, when those cues return, they can help bring the information back. This doesn't mean you can only remember in one place, but it shows that memory is tied to context more than people often realize. State-dependent memory suggests that internal conditions, like mood or arousal, can also act as cues. If you learn something while calm, you may find it easier to recall when calm again, compared to recalling it under intense stress. This is partly because your brain stores not only the information itself, but also aspects of your internal state that were present during learning. It helps explain why emotions can shape what we remember and how quickly we can access it. The serial position effect describes a common pattern in remembering lists. People often recall the first items better and the last items better than the middle. The early items benefit from extra attention and rehearsal, which helps move them into longer-term storage. This is called the primacy effect. The last items are still fresh in working memory when recall begins. This is called the recency effect. The middle items often receive less rehearsal and are less fresh, so they are more likely to be forgotten. Procedural learning is the process of improving skills through practice, often without needing conscious awareness of every improvement. When you learn to play a chord smoothly or type faster, your brain and body build efficient patterns that become automatic. These skills can be surprisingly durable. People may forget facts but still retain certain practiced abilities. Procedural learning shows that memory isn't only about recalling information, it's also about shaping performance over time. Implicit memory refers to memory that influences behavior without conscious recollection. For example, you might complete a familiar phrase more quickly after seeing related words earlier, even if you don't remember seeing them. This kind of priming shows that the brain can store and use information beneath awareness. Implicit memory is one reason we can be shaped by experience without always being able to point to the exact moment that shaped us. Perception is an active process, meaning the brain is constantly interpreting sensory signals rather than simply copying them. The eyes and ears bring in raw data, but the brain decides what that data means, what object you're seeing, how far away it is, and what matters most. This interpretation happens fast, and it usually feels effortless, which can make deception seem like direct reality. But research shows it is a construction, built from signals plus expectations. Top-down processing describes how expectations, goals, and past knowledge shape what we perceive. If you expect to see a friend in a crowd, you may spot similar faces more easily because your brain is tuned to those features. If you read messy handwriting, context helps you guess what letters must be there. Top-down processing shows that perception is guided by the mind's predictions, not only by the raw sensory input. Bottom-up processing emphasizes the role of sensory features themselves: edges, colors, movement, pitch, and intensity. When something is loud or bright, it can capture attention even if you weren't looking for it, because the stimulus is strong. Bottom-up signals are especially important when you encounter something new, because you have less prior knowledge to guide interpretation. In most real-life perception, bottom-up and top-down processes work together. Gestalt principles describe how we naturally organize visual information into meaningful patterns. We group things that are close together, things that look similar, and things that form smooth lines. This helps us quickly recognize objects and scenes without analyzing every detail. Gestalt ideas remind us that the brain tends to see wholes rather than isolated pieces, building structure from scattered sensory parts. Signal detection theory helps explain how we decide whether a faint signal is present, like hearing a quiet sound in noise or spotting a small detail in a blurry image. It separates sensitivity, how well you can detect the signal, from your decision threshold, how willing you are to say, yes, it's there. Two people can have the same sensitivity but different thresholds. One may be cautious and miss signals, another may be bold and create false alarms. This theory helps researchers understand perception under uncertainty and the role of bias in decisions. Psychophysics studies the relationship between physical stimulus properties and what we experience. For example, it asks how much brighter a light must be before it feels noticeably brighter, or how much louder a sound must be to feel like it changed. These questions sound simple, but they reveal how the senses compress and interpret reality. Psychophysics helped establish psychology as a measurement-based science by showing that subjective experience can be studied with precise methods. Adaptation effects show that perception shifts after prolonged exposure to a stimulus. If you stare at a certain color or pattern, your sensory system can temporarily recalibrate, making neutral things appear different afterward. This happens because sensory neurons adjust their responsiveness based on recent input, helping the system stay sensitive to change rather than constant stimulation. Adaptation is one way the brain stays tuned to new information instead of becoming overwhelmed by steady signals. Pain perception is influenced by attention, expectation, and context, not only by tissue signals. When someone is focused on danger, pain can feel stronger, while distraction can reduce pain intensity. Expectations can change interpretation. If you believe something will hurt, you may notice sensations more sharply. This doesn't mean pain is in your head in a dismissive way. It means pain is a real experience created by both body signals and brain evaluation. Multisensory integration is the process of combining information from different senses to create a clearer picture of the world. Seeing lips move can help you understand speech in a noisy room, and combining vision and hearing improves timing and detection. The brain merges cues to reduce uncertainty, often weighting the most reliable sense for the situation. This integration is usually seamless, which is why we experience the world as one coherent scene rather than separate streams. Language processing involves multiple layers: sounds phonology, meanings semantics, sentence structure syntax, and the way context shapes meaning pragmatics. When you hear a sentence, your brain rapidly maps sounds to words, words to meanings, and meanings to a broader message. This happens in fractions of a second, and it requires coordination between memory, attention, and prediction. Language processing shows how deeply the mind relies on patterns learned over years of exposure. The mental lexicon is like a dictionary in the mind, but it's more like a network than a list. Words are connected by meaning, sound, and usage, so thinking of one word can activate related words. This helps explain why you can often find synonyms quickly, or why you might accidentally say a similar-sounding word. The mental lexicon also includes knowledge about how words behave in sentences, not just their definitions. Word frequency affects recognition speed, because common words have been encountered so often that they become easier to access. Your brain has stronger pathways for words you see and hear repeatedly, so they come to mind faster. This is why reading tends to flow smoothly with everyday vocabulary, while rare words slow you down. Frequency effects show how learning history shapes the speed of basic mental operations. Bilingualism research studies how 2 or more languages are represented and managed in the brain. Many bilingual people can switch between languages with impressive control, selecting the right words for the right context. Research suggests that both languages can be active to some degree, even when one is being used, which means bilingual speakers often rely on control processes to reduce interference. Bilingualism is not simply 2 separate boxes, it's a dynamic system that adapts to experience. Code switching shifting between languages within a conversation can be a skilled, context-sensitive behavior rather than confusion. People code switch for emphasis, precision, social connection, or because a phrase fits better in one language. In many communities, it's a normal and meaningful way of speaking. Psychologically, it shows how language is tied to identity, relationships, and the immediate social environment. Aphasia demonstrates that language abilities can be selectively impaired after brain injury, helping researchers understand how language functions are organized. Some people with aphasia may struggle to produce fluent speech, while others may speak fluently but with reduced meaning or difficulty understanding. These patterns show that language is not one single ability. It involves multiple processes that can be disrupted in different ways. Studying aphasia has been important for both science and clinical care. The tip of the tongue state is a familiar experience where you feel you know a word, and some pieces of it are available, but the full word won't come out. You might remember the first letter, the rhythm, or similar words, yet the target stays just out of reach. This shows that memory retrieval can fail at specific stages. You can activate partial information without completing the full access. It also shows that retrieval is an active search process, not a simple readout from storage. Pragmatics is the study of how context shapes meaning beyond literal definitions. When someone says it's cold in here, they might be stating a fact, or they might be politely requesting that a window be closed. Your brain uses cues like tone, situation, and shared knowledge to infer the intended message. Pragmatics reveals that communication is not only about words, it's also about intentions and social understanding. Reading comprehension relies on vocabulary, working memory, and background knowledge working together. Vocabulary helps you decode meaning quickly, working memory helps you hold ideas across sentences, and background knowledge helps you connect new information to what you already understand. When one of these supports is weak, comprehension becomes harder, even if you can read the words. This is why improving comprehension often involves building knowledge and strategies, not only practicing speed. Metacognition is the ability to think about your own thinking, and it helps you learn more effectively. It includes noticing when you're confused, judging what you truly know, and choosing strategies like reviewing or asking questions. Metacognition also helps with self-control because it allows you to monitor your performance and adjust. In daily life, it's what helps you realize you need a break, a different approach, or more time. Decision-making often relies on heuristics, which are mental shortcuts that help us make choices quickly without analyzing every detail. These shortcuts are useful because the world is complex and time is limited, so the brain looks for patterns that have worked before. Most of the time, heuristics lead to reasonable decisions. However, because they simplify reality, they can also create predictable errors, especially in situations that are unfamiliar or emotionally charged. The availability heuristic happens when people judge how common or likely something is based on how easily examples come to mind. If you recently heard about a plane accident on the news, flying might feel more dangerous than it statistically is. This doesn't mean the person is irrational. It means the mind uses ease of recall as a signal of frequency. When examples are vivid or recent, they feel more important, even if they are rare. Anchoring occurs when an initial number or idea influences later judgments, even if that starting point is unrelated. For example, if someone hears a high price before guessing the value of an item, their estimate often shifts upward. The first number becomes a mental reference point, and adjustments from that anchor are usually not large enough to remove its influence. This shows how first impressions can quietly shape later thinking. The framing effect shows that the way information is presented can change decisions, even when the underlying facts stay the same. People often respond differently to a treatment described as 90% survival compared to 10% mortality, even though both mean the same thing. The words highlight different aspects gain or lassand. The brain reacts emotionally to that framing. This demonstrates how meaning is shaped not only by content, but by presentation. Loss aversion refers to the tendency for losses to feel stronger than equivalent gains feel good. Losing $50 can feel more upsetting than finding $50 feels exciting. This imbalance can influence risk-taking, negotiations, and financial decisions. It also helps explain why people sometimes avoid taking beneficial risks if there is a chance of loss. The sunk cost fallacy occurs when people continue investing time, money, or effort into something simply because they have already invested in it. Instead of focusing on future benefits and costs, they focus on what has already been spent. This can lead to staying in a failing project or unhelpful situation longer than is wise. The mind dislikes wasting past effort, even though those past costs cannot be recovered. The planning fallacy describes the common tendency to underestimate how long tasks will take, even when similar tasks took longer in the past. People often imagine a smooth path without interruptions, forgetting unexpected delays. This optimistic bias can lead to stress, missed deadlines, and overcommitment. Recognizing it can help individuals plan with more realistic buffers. Confirmation bias involves seeking and favoring information that supports existing beliefs while overlooking or discounting contradictory evidence. Once people form an opinion, they often notice data that agrees with it more easily. This bias can occur unconsciously and can influence everything from everyday conversations to political decisions. It shows how the mind prefers coherence and consistency over uncertainty. Hindsight bias makes events feel more predictable after they have already happened. Once the outcome is known, people often believe they knew it all along. This can create overconfidence in one's judgment and reduce learning from mistakes. It reminds us that memory is shaped by present knowledge, not just past perception. The illusion of truth effect occurs when repeated statements feel more true simply because they are familiar. Repetition increases ease of processing, and the brain sometimes interprets that ease as accuracy. This effect highlights how familiarity can influence belief even without evidence. It underscores the importance of critical thinking when information is repeated frequently. Motivation includes the internal and external forces that energize and direct behavior. It explains why people set goals, persist through challenges, or sometimes give up. Motivation is influenced by needs, rewards, expectations, and values. Understanding motivation helps explain both everyday habits and major life decisions. Intrinsic motivation refers to doing an activity because it is enjoyable or meaningful in itself. A person might paint, read, or solve puzzles simply because they find it satisfying. When motivation comes from within, people often show more creativity and persistence. This type of motivation is closely tied to curiosity and interest. Extrinsic rewards, such as money or praise, can sometimes reduce intrinsic motivation if they shift attention from enjoyment to reward. When an activity becomes mainly about earning something, the original enjoyment may fade. This effect does not happen in every situation, but it shows how delicate motivation can be. Balancing external rewards with internal meaning is important for long-term engagement. Goal specificity improves performance when goals are clear and appropriately challenging. Instead of saying, "do your best," setting a specific target like finish 3 chapters gives direction. Clear goals help the brain focus effort and measure progress. However, goals that are unrealistic can increase stress rather than motivation. Self-efficacy is the belief in one's ability to complete tasks and reach goals. When people believe they can succeed, they are more likely to attempt challenges and persist through difficulty. Self-efficacy grows through experience, encouragement, and small successes. It plays a powerful role in academic, professional, and personal growth. Expectancy value theories suggest that motivation depends on 2 main factors: how likely success seems and how valuable the outcome is. If someone believes they can succeed and that success matters, motivation increases. If either belief is low, effort often drops. This simple model explains many everyday decisions about work, school, and relationships. Procrastination is often linked to managing emotions rather than laziness. People may delay tasks that create anxiety, boredom, or self-doubt in order to feel temporary relief. The relief reinforces the delay, even though it may increase stress later. Understanding procrastination as emotion regulation helps explain why awareness alone does not always solve it. Delay discounting describes how people tend to prefer smaller immediate rewards over larger delayed rewards. The value of a reward often decreases as the wait increases. This tendency influences financial choices, health behaviors, and habit formation. It reflects the brain's sensitivity to immediate gratification. Habit formation involves linking a cue to a behavior through repetition until the behavior becomes automatic. For example, brushing teeth after dinner or checking a phone when it vibrates. Over time, the cue triggers the action with less conscious thought. Habits reduce the need for decision-making and conserve mental energy. Implementation intentions are simple if-then plans that link a situation with a specific response. For example, if it is 7 a.m., then I will go for a walk. This strategy increases the chance of follow-through by pre-deciding the action. It reduces hesitation and makes behavior more automatic. Emotion research distinguishes between mood and emotion episodes. Moods are longer-lasting and less intense, while emotions are often brief and tied to specific events. For example, feeling generally irritable all day differs from feeling sudden anger in response to a comment. Understanding this difference helps clarify emotional experiences. Appraisal theories suggest that emotions arise from how people interpret events, not only from the events themselves. Two people can experience the same situation but feel differently depending on their evaluation. If one sees a challenge as a threat and another as an opportunity, their emotional responses will differ. This shows that perception and meaning shape feeling. Facial expressions can communicate emotion, but interpretation depends on culture and context. A smile can signal happiness, politeness, or even discomfort, depending on the situation. Cultural display rules influence how openly emotions are shown. This reminds us that emotional expression is both biological and social. Emotion regulation includes strategies used to influence how emotions are experienced or expressed. Some people change their thoughts about a situation, while others distract themselves or seek support. Effective regulation does not mean suppressing emotion entirely, but managing it in a healthy way. This skill supports resilience and well-being. Cognitive reappraisal involves changing how one interprets a situation to alter its emotional impact. For example, seeing criticism as feedback rather than rejection can reduce distress. Reappraisal often decreases negative emotional intensity. It shows how thoughts and feelings are closely connected. Suppression involves hiding emotional expression, even if the feeling remains inside. While it may reduce visible reactions, it can increase physiological stress responses. Over time, frequent suppression may affect well-being. This highlights the difference between changing an emotion and hiding it. Affect labeling means putting feelings into words, such as saying, "I feel anxious." Research suggests that naming emotions can reduce their intensity. The act of labeling seems to engage brain areas involved in regulation. This simple step can create psychological distance from intense feelings. Stress responses involve coordinated changes in the body, including hormone release and increased heart rate. These changes prepare the body for action. While helpful in short bursts, long-term stress can strain health. Managing stress involves both reducing stressors and improving coping strategies. Chronic stress is linked to health risks such as sleep problems, inflammation, and mood changes. When stress remains high for long periods, the body's recovery systems can be overworked. This connection between mind and body shows how psychological experiences influence physical health. Balanced routines and support can help reduce chronic strain. Resilience refers to adapting positively despite adversity. It does not mean avoiding difficulty, but recovering and continuing forward. Resilience is influenced by personal strengths, supportive relationships, and community resources. It shows that growth can occur alongside challenge. Personality psychology studies consistent patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors across time. While situations matter, personality traits influence how people typically respond. Traits provide a stable framework for understanding individual differences. They help explain why people vary in sociability, organization, or emotional sensitivity. The Big Five model describes personality in 5 broad traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These traits capture major dimensions of personality variation. Each trait represents a range rather than a category. People can fall anywhere along each continuum. Traits describe tendencies, but behavior still depends on context. A typically shy person may speak confidently among friends. Personality shapes probability, not destiny. Situations and goals still matter in shaping action. Personality shows moderate stability across adulthood, meaning people often retain core tendencies over time. However, gradual changes can occur with life experiences and intentional effort. Growth is possible even if patterns feel familiar. Stability and change coexist across the lifespan. Temperament refers to early emerging behavioral tendencies observed in childhood. Some children are naturally more active, cautious, or sociable. These patterns can influence later personality development. Early environment interacts with temperament in shaping outcomes. Attachment theory explores how early caregiver relationships influence later expectations about closeness and support. Secure attachment develops when caregivers are consistently responsive. It often leads to confidence in relationships. Attachment patterns can influence adult bonds and emotional regulation. Secure attachment is associated with comfort, seeking help, and exploring independently. People with secure attachment tend to balance closeness and autonomy. They trust that support is available when needed. This foundation supports resilience. Narcissism includes both grandiosity and vulnerability. Some individuals show confidence and dominance, while others show sensitivity to criticism. Narcissistic traits exist on a spectrum. Context influences how they appear. Perfectionism can be adaptive when it involves striving for excellence with flexibility. It becomes maladaptive when linked to harsh self-criticism and fear of mistakes. Balanced standards support growth, while rigid standards can increase stress. Understanding this difference helps support healthy achievement. Sensation seeking reflects a preference for novelty and intensity. People high in sensation seeking may enjoy adventure or excitement. While it can lead to risk-taking, it can also fuel creativity and exploration. It shows how personality influences behavior patterns. Developmental psychology studies changes across the lifespan. It examines cognitive, emotional, and social growth from infancy to old age. Development is shaped by biology, environment, and culture. It highlights how growth continues throughout life. Cognitive development includes changes in reasoning and problem-solving skills. Children gradually move from concrete thinking to more abstract reasoning. These changes are supported by brain maturation and learning. Development is gradual rather than sudden. Executive functions, such as inhibition and working memory, strengthen during childhood and adolescence. These skills help with self-control and planning. Brain development supports these improvements. Maturation continues into early adulthood. Adolescence is a period marked by heightened sensitivity to social evaluation and peer influence. During these years, the brain systems involved in social awareness and reward are especially active, which can make acceptance and belonging feel extremely important. Teenagers often become more aware of how they are perceived by others, and this awareness can influence choices, risk-taking, and emotional reactions. This sensitivity is a normal part of development and gradually becomes more balanced as self-regulation skills strengthen. Identity development involves exploring different roles, beliefs, and goals before committing to them. Adolescents and young adults may question values, career paths, and social groups as they try to define who they are. This exploration can feel uncertain, but it is an important step toward forming a stable sense of self. Over time, commitments become clearer as experiences shape understanding. Language acquisition in childhood is strongly supported by social interaction. Children learn not only by hearing words, but by engaging with caregivers who respond to their sounds and gestures. Conversations, shared attention, and feedback all strengthen language growth. Exposure matters, but active interaction makes learning deeper and more flexible. Theory of mind is the ability to understand that others have thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that may differ from one's own. This skill develops gradually in early childhood as children begin to predict and explain other people's behavior. Understanding that someone can hold a false belief is an important milestone. Theory of mind supports empathy and social cooperation. Adolescents often show improvements in abstract reasoning, allowing them to think about hypothetical situations and moral questions. At the same time, brain systems for impulse control are still maturing. This combination can lead to thoughtful insight in some contexts and risk-taking in others. Development is uneven but gradually becomes more integrated. Aging can involve slower processing speed, meaning tasks may take slightly longer. However, accumulated knowledge and vocabulary often remain strong or even improve. Many older adults rely on experience and pattern recognition to solve problems effectively. Aging reflects both change and continuity rather than simple decline. Cognitive reserve refers to the brain's ability to maintain functioning despite aging or damage. Education, social engagement, and mental stimulation appear to strengthen this reserve. It suggests that lifestyle choices can influence resilience. The concept highlights that the brain remains adaptable across life. Social psychology examines how people influence and are influenced by others. It studies group behavior, relationships, persuasion, and social norms. Even subtle cues from others can shape thoughts and actions. Understanding social influence helps explain everyday interactions. Conformity research shows that people may align with group opinions, even when they privately disagree. The desire to fit in or avoid conflict can influence decisions. This does not mean people lack independence. Rather, social belonging is deeply important. Group pressure can shape behavior in powerful ways. Normative influence occurs when people conform to gain approval or avoid rejection. Informational influence occurs when people conform because they believe the group is correct. Both forms shape social behavior. The context determines which influence is stronger. Obedience studies explore how authority figures affect compliance. Under certain conditions, people may follow instructions even if they feel uneasy. This shows how powerful social roles and expectations can be. Authority and context strongly shape behavior. Social facilitation describes how the presence of others can improve performance on simple or well-practiced tasks. Being observed can increase alertness and motivation. However, complex tasks may suffer under observation. The effect depends on skill level and task difficulty. Social loafing occurs when individuals reduce effort in group settings. When responsibility feels shared, personal accountability can decrease. Clear roles and evaluation reduce this tendency. Group structure influences individual motivation. The bystander effect shows that people are less likely to help in emergencies when others are present. Responsibility feels diffused among the group. When alone, people are more likely to act. Awareness of this effect can increase intentional helping. De-individuation refers to reduced self-awareness and increased impulsivity in certain group contexts. In large crowds, people may feel anonymous. This can lower inhibition and increase risky behavior. Context and group norms influence outcomes. Social identity theory explains how belonging to groups shapes self-concept. People often define themselves partly by group membership. This can strengthen solidarity, but also create bias. Identity influences perception and behavior. In-group bias is the tendency to favor one's own group. People may evaluate their group more positively than others. This can occur even in minimal group situations. Bias arises quickly under certain conditions. Prejudice involves attitudes, Stereotypes involve beliefs, and discrimination involves behavior. These elements are related but distinct. Understanding the difference helps clarify social dynamics. Reducing prejudice requires addressing beliefs and behaviors. Implicit biases are automatic associations that may differ from conscious beliefs. They can influence split-second decisions. Awareness alone may not eliminate them. Training and structural changes can reduce bias effects. Intergroup contact can reduce prejudice when certain conditions are met, such as equal status and shared goals. Positive interaction challenges stereotypes. Structured collaboration strengthens mutual understanding. Context determines effectiveness. Attribution theory studies how people explain behavior. Explanations can focus on internal traits or external situations. These explanations influence judgment and emotion. Misattributions can create misunderstanding. The fundamental attribution error is the tendency to overemphasize personality traits when judging others. Situational factors are often underestimated. This bias shapes first impressions. Awareness can reduce its impact. The self-serving bias involves attributing successes to personal qualities and failures to external factors. This pattern protects self-esteem. However, it can limit growth if overused. Balanced reflection supports learning. Actor-observer differences describe how people explain their own behavior situationally, but others' behavior dispositionally. This difference can create misunderstanding. Perspective taking reduces bias. Awareness improves empathy. The halo effect occurs when one positive trait influences overall judgment. For example, attractiveness may lead to assumptions of competence. This shortcut simplifies evaluation. It can distort objectivity. The mere exposure effect suggests repeated exposure increases liking. Familiarity often feels comfortable. This effect influences preferences for people, brands, and ideas. Repetition shapes perception subtly. Reciprocity norms encourage returning favors. When someone gives help, others often feel obligated to respond. This social rule supports cooperation. It can also be used strategically in persuasion. Attitudes can be measured through self-report or indirect tasks. Direct measures capture conscious beliefs. Indirect measures capture automatic associations. Each approach reveals different aspects. Cognitive dissonance refers to discomfort from holding conflicting beliefs or actions. People often change attitudes to reduce tension. This process can strengthen commitment. It shows how consistency matters psychologically. Persuasion depends on message quality, credibility, and audience engagement. When people think deeply about arguments, strong evidence matters. When attention is low, surface cues influence more. Context shapes persuasion pathways. The elaboration likelihood model proposes central and peripheral routes to persuasion. The central route involves careful thinking. The peripheral route involves simple cues like attractiveness or authority. Motivation determines the route. Reactance occurs when people feel their freedom is threatened. They may resist or do the opposite of what is suggested. Autonomy is psychologically important. Gentle suggestions often work better than pressure. Scarcity increases perceived value. Limited availability signals importance or rarity. This effect influences consumer behavior. Perceived shortage shapes demand. Social norms messages influence behavior by showing what others do or approve of. When people believe positive behavior is common, they may follow it. Norms create powerful expectations. They shape collective patterns. Trust depends on perceptions of competence, integrity, and benevolence. People evaluate whether others are capable, honest, and caring. Trust supports cooperation. Once broken, it is difficult to rebuild. Cooperation increases when people expect future interaction. Ongoing relationships encourage fairness. Shared goals also promote collaboration. Mutual dependence strengthens cooperation. Conflict escalation can result from miscommunication and bias. Small disagreements can grow when intentions are misinterpreted. Emotional reactions intensify disputes. Constructive dialogue reduces escalation. Clinical psychology focuses on assessing and treating mental health concerns. It combines research and therapeutic practice. Clinicians aim to reduce distress and improve functioning. Assessment guides intervention. Psychological diagnosis relies on patterns of symptoms and impairment. It is not based on a single test. Clinicians consider duration, severity, and context. Diagnosis supports structured treatment planning. Comorbidity means multiple disorders can occur together. For example, anxiety and depression often co-occur. This overlap reflects shared risk factors. Treatment often addresses interconnected symptoms. Symptom severity often exists on a continuum rather than in a strict all-or-nothing category. In real life, many people experience mild, moderate, or severe versions of the same kinds of symptoms, and those levels can change over time. This is why mental health is often described as a spectrum, why someone can struggle without fitting neatly into a single label. Thinking in continuums can reduce stigma and support earlier help, because concerns do not have to be extreme to be meaningful. Anxiety involves heightened anticipation of threat, often paired with worry, tension, and physical arousal. It can show up as racing thoughts, difficulty relaxing, restlessness, or a constant feeling that something might go wrong. Avoidance often becomes part of anxiety, because avoiding a feared situation brings short-term relief, even though it can maintain the fear long-term. Anxiety is not only fear, it is also the mind trying to prepare for danger, sometimes in situations where the danger is uncertain or exaggerated. Panic attacks involve sudden surges of intense fear that can feel overwhelming and physically alarming. People may experience a rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath, dizziness, trembling, or a sense of losing control. Even though panic attacks are not usually dangerous medically, they can feel deeply threatening in the moment. Over time, fear of having another panic attack can lead to avoidance of places or activities, which can shrink a person's life if not addressed. Phobias are intense and persistent fears tied to specific objects or situations, such as heights, flying, or certain animals. What makes a phobia different from a simple fear is the strength of the reaction and the level of avoidance it creates. The fear response can be triggered quickly, even when the person knows logically that the situation is relatively safe. Phobias often respond well to gradual exposure-based approaches that teach the brain a new, calmer association. Obsessive-compulsive disorder involves intrusive thoughts, urges, or images that create distress, along with repetitive behaviors or mental rituals meant to reduce that distress. The compulsions can feel urgent and necessary, even when the person recognizes they are excessive. The temporary relief from performing a ritual can reinforce the cycle, making it stronger over time. OCD is not simply about being neat. It is about anxiety, uncertainty, and attempts to regain a sense of safety or control. Depression commonly involves a persistent low mood and slash, or a loss of interest and pleasure in activities. It can also affect sleep, appetite, energy, concentration, and feelings of worth or hope. Depression is not only sadness, it often includes emotional numbness, mental slowing, and a heavy sense of effort in daily life. Treatment often focuses on both thought patterns and behavior patterns, because withdrawing from life can reduce the positive experiences that help mood recover. Bipolar disorders involve episodes of depression and episodes of elevated mood states such as mania or hypomania. During manic or hypomanic periods, a person may feel unusually energetic, confident, and driven, sometimes with reduced need for sleep and increased risk-taking. These episodes can bring short-term productivity, but can also disrupt relationships, judgment, and stability. Effective management often involves understanding patterns over time and using structured supports to reduce extremes. Psychosis includes experiences like hallucinations or delusions, but these experiences can vary widely in content and intensity. Some people may hear voices, others may hold strongly fixed beliefs that are not supported by evidence, and others may experience disorganized thinking. Psychosis is a symptom cluster rather than one single condition, and it can occur in different disorders or medical situations. Support often includes both medication and psychological approaches that help people interpret experiences and stay connected to daily life. Trauma-related disorders can involve intrusive memories, avoidance of reminders, negative changes in mood or thinking, and heightened arousal. People may feel on edge, startle easily, or struggle with sleep and concentration. The mind may attempt to protect itself by avoiding reminders, but avoidance can also prevent healing because the brain never learns that the reminder is not the same as the original danger. Trauma treatment often helps people regain a sense of safety, process memories, and rebuild trust in the present. Dissociation can involve feeling detached from oneself, feeling that the world is unreal, or having gaps in memory. It can appear during intense stress as a protective response, like the mind stepping back from overwhelming experience. Dissociation varies from mild everyday experiences like zoning out to more severe patterns that interfere with functioning. Understanding dissociation helps clarify that it is often linked to coping, not to weakness. Substance use disorders involve impaired control over use, continuing use despite harm, and physiological adaptation. People may find themselves using more than intended, struggling to stop, or spending large amounts of time obtaining or recovering from substances. Over time, tolerance and withdrawal can develop, making change harder. Treatment often addresses both the biological pull of dependence and the psychological and social factors that maintain use. Eating disorders involve serious disturbances in eating behavior and body-related thoughts. They can include restrictive eating, binge eating, purging, or intense fear of weight gain, depending on the disorder. Eating disorders can affect physical health and mental health, and they often involve perfectionism, anxiety, or difficulties with emotion regulation. Recovery typically requires both medical support and psychological treatment because the condition affects mind and body together. ADHD involves patterns of inattention and or hyperactivity impulsivity that interfere with functioning. Inattention can look like difficulty sustaining focus, disorganization, and forgetfulness, while hyperactivity impulsivity can involve restlessness and acting without considering consequences. ADHD is not simply a lack of effort, it reflects differences in attention regulation and executive functioning. Support may include skills training, environmental adjustments, and sometimes medication. Autism spectrum disorder involves differences in social communication and patterns of restricted or repetitive behavior or interests. People on the spectrum may process sensory information differently, prefer routines, or communicate in ways that are direct and literal. Autism is highly diverse. Some individuals need substantial support, while others live independently and thrive in specialized interests. A strengths-based approach recognizes both challenges and unique abilities. Personality disorders describe enduring patterns of inner experience and behavior that cause distress or impairment. These patterns often involve difficulties in relationships, emotional regulation, or self-image, and they tend to be long-standing rather than temporary. They are not simply bad personality, but complex patterns shaped by temperament, learning history, and environment. Treatment often focuses on building stable coping skills and healthier relationship patterns. Sleep disorders include conditions such as insomnia, sleep apnea, parasomnias, and circadian rhythm disorders. Sleep problems can affect mood, attention, physical health, and daily functioning. Insomnia involves difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or feeling restored. Sleep apnea involves breathing disruptions. Parasomnias include unusual behaviors during sleep. Circadian disorders involve timing misalignment. Understanding sleep disorders highlights that poor sleep is often a health issue that can be treated, not just a habit problem. Somatic symptom and related disorders involve distressing bodily symptoms and excessive concern about health. The symptoms are real experiences, not imaginary, but the level of worry and attention can become intense and impairing. People may seek repeated reassurance or medical visits, which can temporarily calm anxiety but reinforce the cycle. Treatment often helps reduce fear and focus while supporting healthy engagement with medical care. Psychotherapy is a structured psychological treatment that uses evidence-informed methods within a supportive relationship. It is not only talking, it often involves learning skills, practicing new behaviors, and changing patterns over time. Different therapies focus on different targets, but most aim to reduce distress and improve functioning. The process can help people understand themselves, strengthen coping, and build more stable emotional and relational habits. Cognitive behavioral therapy targets the links between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It teaches people to notice unhelpful thinking patterns, test them against evidence, and replace them with more balanced views. CBT also works on behavior because actions affect mood and belief. It is often practical and skills-based, focusing on what can be changed in daily life. Exposure therapy reduces fear by helping people face feared cues without relying on avoidance or safety behaviors. Over repeated experiences, the brain learns that the feared outcome is less likely or less catastrophic than expected. This new learning weakens the fear response. Exposure is usually gradual and planned, emphasizing safety, collaboration, and pacing. Behavioral activation helps counter depression by increasing engagement in meaningful and rewarding activities. Depression often leads to withdrawal, which reduces positive experiences and reinforces low mood. Behavioral activation breaks that cycle by focusing on action first, even if motivation feels low. Over time, activity can rebuild energy and a sense of connection to life. Dialectical behavior therapy emphasizes skills for emotion regulation, distress tolerance, and interpersonal effectiveness. It was developed to help people manage intense emotions and reduce harmful behaviors. DBT combines acceptance acknowledging feelings without judgment with change-learning practical strategies. Skills practice is a central part of the approach. Acceptance and commitment therapy focuses on psychological flexibility, meaning the ability to experience thoughts and feelings without being controlled by them. Instead of fighting every uncomfortable emotion, ACT encourages making room for internal experience while choosing actions guided by values. This can reduce avoidance and build a sense of meaning. It teaches that thoughts are events in the mind, not always commands. Interpersonal therapy focuses on how relationships and life roles affect mood. It often targets problems like grief, conflicts, role transitions, or social isolation. By improving communication and strengthening support, mood can improve. IPT highlights that emotional well-being is deeply tied to human connection. Motivational interviewing uses collaborative conversation to strengthen a person's own reasons for change. Instead of lecturing, it explores ambivalence and helps people articulate values and goals. This approach respects autonomy and builds confidence, It is often used in behavior change areas like substance use and health habits. Family therapy treats difficulties in the context of family interaction patterns. It looks at communication, roles, conflict cycles, and supportive behaviors. The goal is not to blame one person, but to shift the system toward healthier functioning. This approach recognizes that relationships can maintain problems, but can also become powerful sources of change. Group therapy provides opportunities for shared learning, support, and feedback. Hearing others' experiences can reduce isolation and shame. Group settings also allow people to practice new interpersonal skills in real time. For many, the group itself becomes a healing environment through connection and understanding. Common factors research suggests that elements like empathy, collaboration, and the therapeutic bond contribute strongly to outcomes across different therapy types. While techniques matter, the relationship often shapes whether people feel safe enough to explore and change. A strong alliance supports honesty and persistence. This perspective helps explain why therapy can work in many forms. Therapeutic alliance refers to agreement on goals, agreement on the tasks of therapy, and the emotional bond between client and therapist. When people feel understood and respected, they are more likely to engage fully. Alliance also helps repair misunderstandings and setbacks. It is often one of the strongest predictors of therapy success. Treatment fidelity means delivering an intervention as it was designed in research. In studies, fidelity checks help ensure that outcomes are truly linked to the treatment methods rather than variations in delivery. In practice, fidelity can improve consistency and effectiveness. It also supports clearer learning about what works. Evidence-based practice integrates research evidence, clinical expertise, and client preferences. It avoids one-size-fits-all treatment by considering both science and individual needs. This approach respects that people differ in culture, goals, and values. Good care blends best evidence with personalized application. Psychological assessment can include interviews, standardized tests, and behavioral observation. Clinicians gather information about symptoms, functioning, history, and strengths. Tests can provide structured comparisons to norms, while interviews capture context and meaning. Assessment guides diagnosis and treatment planning. Intelligence testing aims to estimate cognitive abilities such as reasoning and problem-solving, but results are influenced by culture, language, education, and test familiarity. Intelligence is complex and multidimensional, not a single number. Tests can be useful for identifying learning needs, but they must be interpreted carefully. Context matters in understanding any score. Neuropsychological testing evaluates cognitive functions such as memory, attention, language, and executive skills to understand brain-related changes. It can help clarify the effects of injury, illness, or developmental differences. These assessments use patterns of strengths and weaknesses rather than one isolated score. The results can guide rehabilitation and support strategies. Risk assessment considers factors that may increase risk of harm, but prediction is never perfect. Clinicians evaluate history, current stressors, supports, and warning signs. The goal is to reduce risk by building safety plans and supports rather than making absolute predictions. It highlights that human behavior is complex and influenced by changing circumstances. Confidentiality is a core ethical principle in psychology, meaning personal information shared in treatment is protected. This creates safety and trust, so people can speak openly. There are specific legal and ethical exceptions, such as imminent risk of harm, but these are limited. Understanding confidentiality helps people feel secure in seeking support. Informed consent means explaining what will happen, the risks and benefits, and available alternatives before participation in treatment or research. People have the right to understand and choose freely. Consent is not a single signature but an ongoing process of communication. This principle protects dignity and autonomy. Health psychology studies how thoughts, emotions, and behaviors interact with physical health and illness. It looks at how stress affects the body, why some people follow medical advice more easily than others, and how habits like sleep, movement, and nutrition shape long-term well-being. This field also examines how people cope with diagnoses, pain, and recovery, and how healthcare systems can communicate more effectively. In many ways, health psychology reminds us that the body and mind are not separate worlds, they constantly influence each other. The biopsychosocial model explains health by combining biological factors, psychological factors, and social factors. Biology includes things like genetics, immune function, and hormones. Psychological factors include stress, beliefs, coping skills, and emotions. Social factors include relationships, culture, work conditions, and access to care. This model is widely used because it captures the reality that health is rarely caused by a single factor. Stress can influence immune function through hormonal and autonomic pathways. When stress is short-term, the body can temporarily shift resources to handle immediate demands. But when stress is long-lasting, stress hormones can alter inflammation and immune responses. This does not mean stress directly causes illness in a simple way, but it can change the body's vulnerability and recovery patterns. Managing stress can therefore support immune resilience over time. Placebo and nocebo effects show that expectations can shape symptom experience in both positive and negative directions. When someone expects improvement, their attention, interpretation of sensations, and stress response can shift in helpful ways. When someone expects harm, discomfort can feel stronger, even if the treatment is neutral. These effects highlight that meaning and belief can influence real bodily experience. They also show why communication in healthcare matters so much. Adherence to medical regimens is influenced by many factors, including beliefs about treatment, daily routines, costs, side effects, and social support. Even highly motivated people can struggle if the regimen is complicated or if side effects are unpleasant. Clear instructions, reminders, and supportive conversations can improve adherence. Understanding these barriers helps healthcare providers design plans people can realistically follow. Pain catastrophizing can amplify pain and disability by increasing threat interpretation and attention to pain signals. When someone expects pain to be unbearable or believes it signals severe harm, the nervous system can become more reactive. This can lead to avoidance of activity and increased sensitivity. Reducing catastrophizing does not deny pain, it helps the mind interpret pain signals more realistically, which can improve coping and functioning. Mindfulness-based interventions train attention and a non-judgmental awareness of experience. Instead of fighting every thought or sensation, mindfulness practice encourages noticing what is present without immediate reaction. This can reduce stress reactivity and improve emotional regulation. Mindfulness approaches are often used for stress management, relapse prevention, and coping with chronic pain, though results vary depending on the person and practice consistency. Sleep supports emotion regulation, attention, and memory, which is why poor sleep can affect mood and thinking so quickly. When sleep is disrupted, the brain often becomes more reactive to negative stimuli and less able to regulate emotional responses. Attention becomes more fragile, and mistakes become more likely. Sleep also supports memory consolidation, helping the brain stabilize what it learned during the day. Protecting sleep can therefore support both mental and physical health. Exercise is associated with improvements in mood and anxiety through multiple pathways. Physically, movement influences neurotransmitters, inflammation, and stress hormone regulation. Psychologically, it increases confidence, provides distraction from rumination, and creates a sense of accomplishment. Socially, exercise can connect people with others and build routine. The benefits vary by intensity and personal preference, but regular movement is consistently linked to better well-being. Social support is linked to better health outcomes, partly because it buffers stress and encourages healthy behavior. Supportive relationships can reduce loneliness, provide practical help, and offer emotional comfort during difficult times. People with strong support often cope better with illness and recover more smoothly. Support also affects habits, because friends and family can influence sleep, diet, and activity patterns. This shows how deeply health is tied to connection. Sleep cycles typically repeat multiple times per night and include NREM and REM stages. Rather than being one uniform state, sleep shifts through different phases, each with different brain activity and functions. These cycles shape how restored you feel in the morning. If sleep is interrupted, the sequence can be disturbed, which may affect memory and mood. Understanding sleep cycles helps explain why the timing and continuity of sleep matter. On-REM sleep includes lighter stages and deeper slow-wave sleep. In the deeper stages, brain waves become slower and the body becomes more physically relaxed. Slow-wave sleep is often linked to physical restoration and aspects of memory consolidation. When people are deprived of deep sleep, they can feel mentally foggy and physically tired. This stage is one reason consistent, uninterrupted sleep feels so important. Stage N2 sleep includes features called sleep spindles and K-complexes, which researchers study for their roles in learning and sleep stability. Sleep spindles are brief bursts of brain activity that may help protect sleep from external noise and support memory processing. K-complexes are large waves that can occur in response to stimuli, possibly helping the brain evaluate whether something is important without fully waking. These patterns show that the sleeping brain is active, organized, and responsive. REM sleep features rapid eye movements and muscle atonia, meaning most muscles are temporarily relaxed to prevent acting out dreams. REM is often associated with vivid dreaming, though dreaming can occur in other stages too. Brain activity during REM is different from deep sleep, resembling waking activity in some regions. REM is studied for roles in emotional processing, learning, and creativity, although these roles are still being explored. Sleep contributes to memory consolidation, but different stages support different kinds of learning. Some kinds of memory for facts and experiences may benefit from slow-wave sleep, while certain skill learning may benefit more from other sleep features. Sleep also helps integrate new information into existing knowledge networks. This is why sleep after learning often improves later performance. The brain is not off during sleep, it is reorganizing. Procedural skills often improve after sleep because the brain continues practicing patterns beneath awareness. This can show up as better speed or accuracy after a night of rest, even without additional practice. Sleep seems to stabilize motor sequences and reduce interference. This is one reason consistent sleep can support athletic training and skill building. It's like the brain is quietly refining what you rehearsed during the day. Emotional memory processing can be influenced by sleep, and sleep may change which details are retained. People sometimes remember the emotional core of an event, while peripheral details fade. Sleep may help sort emotional experiences, reducing their raw intensity while preserving meaning. This can be helpful for adaptation, though not everyone experiences the same effects. Sleep is deeply tied to how emotional experiences are stored and revisited. Sleep deprivation reduces sustained attention and increases variability in reaction time. People may have brief lapses where attention drops out for a moment. Even if someone feels awake, performance can become inconsistent and error-prone. This is especially important for driving and tasks requiring constant monitoring. Sleep loss affects the brain's ability to maintain stable focus. Chronic, insufficient sleep is linked to increased risk of mood symptoms and stress sensitivity. When sleep is repeatedly shortened, emotional regulation becomes harder, and small stressors can feel larger. Over time, this can contribute to anxiety, irritability, and low mood. It can also affect physical health through metabolic and immune pathways. Regular, adequate sleep supports both resilience and calm. Circadian rhythms are about 24-hour biological cycles that influence sleep timing, alertness, and many bodily functions. Light exposure is a key signal that sets the circadian clock. When rhythms are misaligned, such as with irregular schedules, sleep quality can suffer. Circadian rhythms help explain why some people feel more alert in the morning and others later in the day. They are a built-in timing system guiding rest and activity. Educational psychology studies how people learn and how teaching can be designed to support understanding. It examines memory, motivation, attention, and classroom environments. This field helps identify strategies that make learning more durable and less stressful. It also explores how individual differences and context shape academic outcomes. Educational psychology connects research to practical teaching. Retrieval practice, or self-quizzing, strengthens memory by repeatedly pulling information out of the mind. This act of retrieval is like exercising a memory pathway, making it easier to access later. It also reveals what you truly know versus what only feels familiar. Retrieval practice tends to outperform passive rereading for long-term retention. It is one of the most reliable findings in learning research. Interleaving means mixing different types of problems or topics during study rather than practicing one type repeatedly. While interleaving can feel harder, it improves long-term learning because it forces the brain to notice differences and choose the correct strategy. This helps with discrimination and flexible application. Interleaving is often beneficial in math, sports, and any area with multiple related skills. Difficulty during practice can sometimes signal deeper learning. Worked examples help novices learn complex skills by sharing step-by-step solutions. Instead of struggling blindly, learners see how an expert approaches the problem. This reduces unnecessary cognitive load and allows attention to focus on the key principles. Over time, worked examples can be faded, so learners do more steps themselves. This approach supports learning without overwhelming working memory. Feedback is most useful when it is timely, specific, and focused on actions rather than personal traits. Clear feedback helps learners understand what to adjust and why. When feedback is delayed or vague, it becomes harder to connect it to performance. Effective feedback supports improvement by guiding attention to controllable steps. It can also shape motivation when delivered respectfully. Growth mindset research studies beliefs about whether abilities can develop through effort and learning strategies. When people believe improvement is possible, they often persist longer and use more effective approaches. However, mindset works best when paired with concrete support and good teaching. Simply telling someone to try harder is not enough. The idea emphasizes learning processes rather than fixed labels. Test anxiety can impair performance because worry consumes working memory resources. When the mind is filled with fear of failure, it has less space for solving problems. Physical symptoms like racing heart can also disrupt concentration. Test anxiety does not reflect low intelligence. It reflects stress responses in evaluation situations. Strategies like preparation, breathing, and reappraisal can reduce its impact. Classroom belonging and teacher support are linked to engagement and persistence. When students feel accepted and valued, they are more willing to participate and take academic risks. Supportive teachers create environments where mistakes are part of learning. Belonging also reduces stress, which improves attention. Social-emotional climate matters for learning, not just content. Metacognitive calibration is how accurately people judge what they know. When calibration is poor, people may stop studying too early or waste time on material they already understand. Improving calibration involves testing oneself and seeking feedback. Accurate self-monitoring helps people study smarter. It connects directly to effective learning strategies. Spaced review schedules generally outperform cramming because they reinforce memory over time. Revisiting material after delays strengthens retrieval pathways and reduces forgetting. Cramming can produce short-term familiarity, but weaker long-term retention. Spacing also makes learning more stable under stress. Regular review builds durable knowledge. Industrial organizational psychology applies psychology to work settings. It studies hiring, training, leadership, teamwork, and well-being. The goal is to improve both performance and quality of work life. This field uses data to design better systems and fairer selection methods. It connects human behavior to organizational outcomes. Job analysis identifies tasks and required skills to guide hiring and training decisions. By clarifying what a job truly requires, organizations can select candidates more fairly. Job analysis also helps design training programs that match real tasks. It creates a foundation for evaluation and performance standards. Clear job analysis supports both efficiency and fairness. Structured interviews predict job performance better than unstructured interviews because they ask consistent questions and use standardized scoring. This reduces bias and makes comparisons clearer. Unstructured interviews can be influenced by first impressions and small talk. Structure focuses attention on job-relevant evidence. It improves reliability in hiring decisions. Work sample tests predict performance by measuring job-relevant behavior directly. Instead of relying only on talk, candidates demonstrate skills. This can reduce guesswork and improve fairness. Work samples can also improve applicant perceptions because they feel relevant. They provide practical evidence of ability. Team effectiveness depends on communication, role clarity, coordination, and psychological safety. When team members understand responsibilities and can speak openly, collaboration improves. Psychological safety means people feel safe to share ideas and admit mistakes. Without it, teams hide problems and lose learning. Healthy teams balance trust and structure. Leadership research often distinguishes transactional leadership from transformational leadership. Transactional leadership focuses on rewards, monitoring, and clear exchanges. Transformational leadership focuses on inspiration, shared vision, and motivating people beyond immediate rewards. Both styles can be effective depending on context. Leadership effectiveness often depends on matching style to needs. Burnout involves exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced sense of efficacy, often linked to chronic workplace stressors. It can develop when demands are high and recovery is low. Burnout affects performance, mental health, and physical health. Solutions include workload adjustments, support, and meaningful control. It is not simply personal weakness. It reflects environment and resources. Organizational culture shapes norms about communication, values, and behavior. Culture influences whether people feel safe, respected, and motivated. A healthy culture supports engagement and retention. A toxic culture increases stress and turnover. Culture is built through leadership actions and everyday habits. Selection tools must balance prediction with fairness and adverse impact considerations. A tool might predict performance but unfairly disadvantage certain groups if not designed carefully. Organizations must evaluate validity and equity. Good selection combines evidence with ethical responsibility. This supports both effectiveness and justice. Motivation at work is influenced by autonomy, competence, relatedness, and meaning. People work better when they feel some control, feel capable, feel connected, and see purpose. These factors support engagement beyond external rewards. Work design can strengthen these needs. Meaningful work supports long-term motivation. Forensic psychology applies psychological principles to legal settings. It includes evaluations related to competency, risk, and credibility. This field bridges science and law, requiring careful, ethical judgment. Forensic psychologists must communicate clearly to courts. Their role is to inform legal decisions, not to decide outcomes. Eyewitness memory can be influenced by stress, lighting, suggestion, and line-up procedures. Under stress, attention can narrow, and details may be missed. Suggestive questioning can alter recall. Line-up design affects identification accuracy. These findings have shaped best practices in legal procedures. Confidence in eyewitness identification does not always match accuracy, especially under poor viewing conditions. People can feel certain, even when mistaken. Confidence can also be influenced by feedback after identification. This is why procedures aim to avoid inflating confidence. Memory feels vivid, even when it is wrong. False confessions can occur due to coercive interrogation, fatigue, or desire to escape the situation. Some people confess to end stress or because they become confused. Vulnerability factors like youth or cognitive limitations can increase risk. This shows how powerful situation and pressure can be. Ethical interrogation practices aim to reduce false confessions. Competency evaluations assess whether someone can understand legal proceedings and assist counsel. This includes understanding charges, possible outcomes, and roles of court personnel. Competency can change over time with treatment. The purpose is to ensure fairness in legal process. It is a psychological and legal concept combined. Criminal profiling is not a single standardized method and varies widely in evidence base. Some approaches rely on experience and pattern matching, while others try to be more data-driven. Profiling can be misunderstood in popular media as highly precise. In reality, it is often uncertain and should not replace evidence. Critical evaluation is necessary. Juror decision-making can be influenced by story coherence, evidence complexity, and pre-trial publicity. Jurors often build narratives to make sense of information. Complex evidence can be harder to evaluate, especially without guidance. Media exposure can shape expectations. Courts attempt to reduce bias through procedures and instructions. Risk tools estimate probabilities based on group data and must be interpreted cautiously for individuals. They can help identify patterns of risk factors, but they do not predict with certainty. Context, change, and protective factors matter. Ethical use requires transparency and limits. Tools support decisions but should not replace judgment. Victim impact statements and emotional testimony can influence perceptions of severity. Emotional information can increase attention and empathy, shaping punishment judgments. While such statements can give voice to harm, they can also affect impartiality. Courts balance fairness with recognition of impact. Psychology helps explain how emotion shapes judgment. Memory for traumatic events can be vivid, yet still subject to distortion. High emotion can strengthen memory for certain central details, while weakening peripheral details. Later conversations and interpretations can reshape recall. Vividness is not the same as accuracy. Understanding this helps support both compassion and careful evaluation. Cultural psychology studies how culture shapes cognition, emotion, and social behavior. Culture influences what people value, how they interpret events, and how they express feelings. It shapes norms about self, family, and community. These influences are learned and often feel normal within a culture. Cultural psychology reminds us that human behavior is deeply contextual. Individualism-collectivism is one framework describing cultural differences in self-concept. Individualistic cultures often emphasize independence and personal achievement. Collectivistic cultures often emphasize interdependence and group harmony. Most societies contain elements of both. This framework helps explain differences in communication and motivation. Display rules are cultural norms about when and how emotions should be shown. In some cultures, open expression is encouraged. In others, restraint is valued. These rules shape social interaction and emotional experience. People learn them through family and community. They help maintain social harmony in different ways. Self-esteem can be defined and valued differently across cultures. In some contexts, personal confidence and standing out may be emphasized. In others, humility and fitting in may be more important. This affects how people respond to praise and criticism. It shows that psychological constructs can vary in meaning. Language can influence categorization and attention, but effects vary and are not absolute. Certain languages highlight different distinctions, which can shape how speakers notice features. However, people can still learn and think flexibly across languages. The relationship is complex rather than deterministic. Language and thought influence each other in subtle ways. Acculturation involves adapting to a new culture and can include stress as well as growth. People may face challenges with language, identity, and belonging. At the same time, they can gain new opportunities and perspectives. Supportive communities reduce acculturation stress. Adaptation is a process, not a single event. Cultural humility emphasizes ongoing learning and avoiding assumptions about others' experiences. It involves recognizing limits of one's own perspective. In practice, it encourages asking, listening, and adapting respectfully. Cultural humility supports better care and communication. It focuses on openness rather than mastery. Measurement equivalence is needed before comparing psychological scores across cultures. A test may not measure the same construct in the same way everywhere. Translation, norms, and cultural meaning all matter. Without equivalence, comparisons can be misleading. Researchers use methods to test whether measures function similarly. Norms around help-seeking influence use of mental health services. In some cultures, seeking professional help may be common and accepted. In others, family support or spiritual guidance may be preferred. Stigma and beliefs about mental health shape decisions. Understanding norms supports better outreach and care. Stigma is shaped by cultural beliefs and can reduce disclosure and treatment engagement. People may fear judgment or exclusion. Stigma can also affect self-image, leading to shame. Reducing stigma involves education, contact, and supportive policies. Cultural context shapes which strategies work best. Evolutionary psychology examines how some psychological tendencies might relate to challenges faced by humans in ancestral environments. It asks why certain patterns like social bonding or threat detection may have been adaptive. However, it is careful work because modern environments are very different. The approach tries to generate testable hypotheses about behavior. It is one lens among many, not a complete explanation. The evolutionary approach is debated and requires careful hypothesis testing to avoid just-so stories. A claim that something evolved must be supported by evidence, and competing explanations must be considered. Researchers use cross-cultural data, comparative methods, and careful predictions. Debate helps refine the field. It encourages strong standards for explanation. Comparative psychology studies behavior across species to understand learning, cognition, and emotion. By comparing humans with other animals, researchers can identify shared mechanisms and unique traits. This work informs understanding of memory, conditioning, and social behavior. It also shapes animal welfare and training practices. Studying other species expands our understanding of minds. Classical conditioning links a neutral cue with a meaningful stimulus until the cue triggers a response. A common example is learning to feel anxious when hearing a sound associated with bad news. Conditioning shows how associations form automatically. It also explains why emotional reactions can appear quickly. Many therapies use this understanding to reduce learned fear. Operant conditioning changes behavior through consequences like reinforcement and punishment. Behaviors followed by rewards are more likely to repeat, while behaviors followed by unpleasant outcomes may decrease. This principle applies to habits, parenting, and workplaces. It shows how environment shapes behavior patterns. Timing and consistency matter greatly. Reinforcement schedules influence how behavior patterns develop. Fixed schedules provide rewards after a set number of actions or time. Variable schedules provide rewards unpredictably. Variable schedules often create stronger, more persistent behavior, which helps explain why gambling can be so engaging. Understanding schedules shows how habits become resistant to change. Observational learning means people can learn by watching others without direct reinforcement. Children learn social behaviors by observing caregivers, peers, and media. Modeling can shape both good habits and harmful ones. This learning is efficient because it avoids trial and error costs. It shows the power of examples in shaping behavior. Learned helplessness research shows how uncontrollable stressors can reduce later attempts to change outcomes. When people repeatedly experience situations where effort does not help, they may stop trying even when new opportunities arise. This pattern helps explain some aspects of depression and passivity. However, the effect can be reduced by restoring control and teaching coping skills. It highlights the importance of perceived agency. Habit learning can persist even when outcomes change, especially when behaviors become automatic. A person may keep checking a phone out of habit, even if notifications are no longer rewarding. Once a coaction pattern is strong, it can run with little thought. Changing habits often requires changing cues or replacing the behavior. This persistence shows why habits can be hard to break. Extinction reduces a learned response when a cue is no longer paired with an outcome, but it does not erase the original learning completely. The old association can return under stress or in a new context, which is why relapse can happen. Extinction is better understood as new learning that competes with old learning. Exposure therapy uses extinction principles by pairing feared cues with safety. Understanding extinction helps explain why practice and repetition matter. Neuroscience-informed psychology studies how brain systems support cognition and emotion. It looks at how networks coordinate during attention, memory, decision-making, and feeling. It uses tools like imaging, and lesion studies. The goal is not to reduce psychology to biology, but to connect levels of explanation. This field shows how mental experiences are linked to brain function. The amygdala is involved in processing salient and threat-related cues, but it is not only a fear center. It helps detect significance, including positive and negative signals. It interacts with many brain regions to shape learning and attention. This broader role explains why it appears in studies beyond fear. It is part of a network, not a single emotion switch. The hippocampus is important for forming certain kinds of new declarative memories, especially those tied to events and contexts. It helps bind together details into coherent episodes. Damage to the hippocampus can impair formation of new memories while leaving older skills intact. This shows memory systems are specialized. The hippocampus also helps with spatial navigation and context learning. The prefrontal cortex supports planning, inhibition, and flexible control, and development continues into early adulthood. This area helps weigh options, resist impulses, and adjust behavior based on goals. It works closely with emotion and reward systems. Because it develops gradually, self-control improves with age for many people. This helps explain developmental patterns in decision-making. Dopamine pathways play a key role in reward learning and motivation, especially through prediction error signals. When outcomes are better or worse than expected, dopamine activity helps update learning. This supports adapting to new information and reinforcing useful behaviors. Dopamine is not simply pleasure, it is tied to learning, drive, and anticipation. Understanding dopamine helps explain habits and motivation. Serotonin is involved in many functions, including mood regulation, appetite, and sleep, through multiple receptor systems. It influences how the brain balances stability and flexibility. Because serotonin has many roles, changes in serotonin systems can affect multiple aspects of experience. This complexity explains why treatments affecting serotonin can have varied effects. It is a broad modulator rather than a single-purpose chemical. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to change with learning and experience across the lifespan. Practice strengthens neural connections that support skills. New environments can reshape attention and perception. Plasticity is not unlimited, but it remains active throughout life. This is one reason learning and recovery are possible. Stress hormones can alter learning and attention, sometimes enhancing memory for emotional events while impairing other functions. Under stress, the brain may focus on threat-related information at the expense of flexibility. This can be helpful in emergencies but harmful when stress is chronic. It also explains why people remember stressful events differently. Stress shapes what the brain prioritizes. Lateralization refers to functional specialization across hemispheres, but most tasks involve both sides interacting. Language tends to be left dominant for many people, but the right hemisphere contributes to tone and context. Spatial processing often involves right hemisphere networks, but not exclusively. The brain is cooperative, not divided into isolated halves. This prevents oversimplified left brain/right brain myths. Brain networks coordinate across regions, and complex mental functions rarely map to one single area. Attention, emotion, and memory rely on distributed systems communicating rapidly. This is why brain injuries can have varied effects depending on network disruption. Network models provide a more accurate picture than single-spot explanations. The mind emerges from patterns of coordination. Psychometrics develops tools to measure psychological attributes like traits, abilities, and symptoms. Good measurement helps researchers and clinicians make informed decisions. Psychometrics studies reliability, validity, and fairness. It also designs better questionnaires and tests. Measurement is foundational because psychology relies on quantifying invisible constructs. Item response theory models how individual test items function across levels of a trait. It examined how likely people with different ability levels are to answer correctly. This allows tests to be more precise and efficient. It also helps identify biased or poorly functioning items. IRT improves measurement quality in education and clinical assessment. Norm-referenced scores compare a person to a reference group, while criterion-referenced scores compare to a fixed standard. Norms tell you where someone stands relative to others. Criteria tell you whether someone meets a particular level of skill. Both are useful depending on the goal. Understanding the difference prevents misinterpretation. Factor analysis examines how observed variables cluster together, revealing underlying dimensions. For example, different anxiety symptoms may cluster into a common factor. This helps build theories and improve measurement. Factor analysis can also reveal that a test measures multiple traits. It is a key tool in psychological research. Response styles like acquiescence can distort surveys if not accounted for. Some people tend to agree with statements regardless of content. Others may choose extreme options more often. These patterns can create misleading scores. Psychologists design items and analyses to reduce these biases. Social desirability bias occurs when people underreport stigmatized behaviors or overreport socially approved ones. This can happen even without conscious lying. People want to present themselves positively. Anonymous methods and careful question design can reduce this bias. It matters for research on sensitive topics. Behavioral genetics uses twin and adoption designs to estimate genetic and environmental contributions to variation in traits. By comparing similarity between identical and fraternal twins, researchers can infer heritability. These methods do not identify single genes for complex traits, but show patterns of influence. They help explain why both biology and environment matter. Results describe populations, not individuals. Heritability describes variation in the population under specific conditions, not a fixed outcome for a person. A trait can be highly heritable, yet still change with environment. Heritability also depends on context. In a uniform environment, genetic differences may explain more variance. Misunderstanding heritability can lead to determinism. Correct interpretation emphasizes probability and context. Gene-environment interplay includes correlations and interactions. Correlations occur when genetics influence the environment people seek or evoke. Interactions occur when the same environment affects people differently depending on genetic sensitivity. This explains why experiences do not impact everyone equally. Development is shaped by both inherited tendencies and life context. Epigenetic mechanisms can influence gene expression without changing DNA sequence and are studied in stress and development. Chemical markers can turn genes up or down depending on experiences. This does not mean experiences rewrite DNA, but they can influence how genes are expressed. Epigenetics adds complexity to the nature-nurture discussion. It highlights how biology responds to environment. Positive psychology studies well-being, strengths, and what helps people flourish. It looks at gratitude, meaning, connection, and resilience. It does not ignore suffering, but it also studies what supports thriving. This field emphasizes building resources, not only reducing problems. Well-being is treated as an outcome worth studying scientifically. Gratitude interventions aim to increase noticing and appreciating positives, though effects vary. Some people benefit from writing gratitude lists or reflecting on helpful moments. Others may find it less impactful depending on personality and situation. The goal is to shift attention towards supportive aspects of life. Research studies both benefits and limitations. Flow describes deep engagement when challenge and skill are balanced. In flow, people feel focused, absorbed, and energized. Time may feel altered because attention is fully engaged. Flow often occurs in creative work, sports, and complex tasks. It is associated with satisfaction and performance. Meaning in life is studied as distinct from pleasure. People can feel happy in the moment, without feeling their life is meaningful, and vice versa. Meaning often involves purpose, values, and contribution. It supports resilience because it provides direction. Research shows meaning is linked to well-being. Self-compassion involves treating oneself with kindness, recognizing shared humanity, and being mindful of suffering. It differs from self-pity because it includes balance and perspective. Self-compassion can reduce harsh self-criticism. It supports motivation by creating a supportive inner voice. It is linked to healthier coping. Hope theories often distinguish pathways thinking and agency thinking. Pathways are the routes to goals, and agency is the motivation to pursue them. People high in hope tend to generate alternative routes when blocked. This flexible problem-solving supports persistence. Hope can be developed through skill building. Character strengths frameworks attempt to classify widely valued traits, but systems differ. Some frameworks list strengths like kindness, curiosity, and fairness. These classifications aim to guide personal development. However, cultural values influence which strengths are emphasized. Research continues to refine these models. Well-being is multidimensional, often including emotional, psychological, and social components. Feeling good is one part, functioning well is another, and belonging is another. Different measures capture different aspects. This helps explain why well-being is complex. Improving well-being often involves multiple domains. Happiness measures can be influenced by question wording and current context. If someone is asked about happiness after thinking of problems, ratings may drop. If asked after recalling positive events, ratings may rise. Researchers try to reduce these effects through careful design. Measurement reminds us that happiness is both real and sensitive to framing. Interventions show average benefits, but may not help everyone equally. Effects depend on person, timing, and context. Some people benefit strongly, others little, and a few may even feel worse. This is why psychology looks for moderators factors that change outcomes. Personalization matters. The Zeigarnik effect suggests unfinished tasks can be remembered better than completed ones in some contexts. Incomplete activities may stay mentally active because the brain keeps track of unresolved goals. This can be useful for returning to a task, but it can also create mental tension. The effect varies depending on context and attention. It highlights how goals shape memory. The Peakian rule suggests that remembered evaluation depends strongly on the most intense point and the endu. People may judge an experience not by its total duration, but by these key moments. This influences how we remember vacations, medical procedures, and events. It shows memory is not a perfect average. Designing better experiences often focuses on improving endings. The Google effect describes reduced memory for information people expect to look up later. When knowledge feels externally stored, the brain may focus on where to find it, rather than storing it internally. This does not mean people become less intelligent, but it changes memory strategy. It reflects adaptation to technology. People still remember meaning but may store fewer details. The Dunning-Kruger pattern refers to mismatches between confidence and competence, though effects vary. People with low skill may lack the insight to recognize errors, inflating confidence. With more learning, insight increases, and confidence may recalibrate. The pattern is not universal, but it illustrates how self-evaluation can be inaccurate. Feedback and experience improve calibration. The Barnum effect describes how people accept vague statements as personally accurate. General descriptions can feel specific because people interpret them through their own experiences. This effect helps explain why some personality readings seem convincing. It shows how meaning-making fills in gaps. Critical thinking reduces susceptibility. The Pygmalion effect refers to performance changes linked to others' expectations, especially in education. When teachers expect students to do well, they may give more attention and encouragement, which supports improvement. Expectations can shape opportunity and confidence. The effect depends on context and strength of expectations. It highlights the social nature of learning. Priming effects describe how prior exposure can influence later responses, though reliability depends on task and design. Seeing certain words can make related concepts more accessible. This can subtly shape judgments and behavior. Some priming findings are robust, while others are weaker and harder to replicate. Modern research emphasizes careful methods. Habitual sleep timing and light exposure can shift circadian phase, affecting morningness and eveningness. Bright light in the morning can move the clock earlier, while light at night can delay it. This helps explain why screen use late at night can make sleep later. People vary in sensitivity to these cues. Circadian timing is adjustable but requires consistency. Psychological science increasingly emphasizes open data, transparent reporting, and improved methodology. Sharing data and methods allows other researchers to verify results. Transparent reporting reduces selective outcome reporting. These practices strengthen trust and replication. The field continues to improve standards. Across subfields, psychology aims to build and test explanations of behavior and experience using careful measurement and theory. It connects mind, brain, and society through evidence-based approaches. While questions can be complex, the goal is clarity through research. Psychology is ultimately about understanding patterns that shape human life. And as you sit with these ideas, it can be quietly comforting to remember that so much of what we feel and do can be studied, understood, and gently improved over time.